We are putting a bow on the week with Kevin Kietzman, who did an amazing job yesterday on his show. Does an amazing job every day on his show. But if you missed it yesterday, go back, listen on the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, search Kevin Kietzman. You can find Uncanceled there, or his other podcast, of course, that he does every day. Kevin Kietzman Has Issues. And Kevin played audio from a podcast that Britt Reed did here in the last few weeks, talking about his battles through addiction and what's gone on in his life the last few years. And, you know, Kevin, my takeaway, and I'm not sitting here saying I have sympathy for what has happened to Britt Reed because of what happened with that little girl outside of Arrowhead Stadium, 4.5 years ago now. But I did come away liking him more and really respecting him more than I ever had over the last few years. How about you?
There is no doubt about that, and the entire Reed family, because sometimes in the Chiefs and Andy Reid are very secretive. They're very private. I understand that, and I respect that absolutely to the fullest. But the more we learned and the more he said and the more he has talked about his journey and his time in prison and all these different things, and if you listen to the full podcast, it's just amazing. I think the more sympathy you have for a family that has been in crisis for decades. And we all have things in our lives. We all have people in our lives that have been through things that are very difficult, maybe not as difficult as what the Reeds have gone through, but we've watched a couple of tragedies. They lost a son. Andy Reid lost a son. Britt lost a brother. And then this little girl who became such a figure in Kansas City after she was hurt in that car wreck. They've moved on to a very private life. I get it. She's doing well by all accounts. The people that know her, that she's recovering and getting better. I don't think she'll ever be 100% healthy, but she's living her best life. We don't want to forget her and what happened to her, but the fact of the matter is Britt was a mess too and needed help. And I think everyone in our listening audience right now has a big enough heart and is a compassionate enough person, no matter what someone has done. We want somebody to live their best life, to become better every single day. I heard you earlier, Pete, talking about your faith. And you said you go to church every week and you try to learn a little bit more each week. Man, that's what our journeys are all about. Somehow, some way, grow, get better, maybe touch somebody in a positive way each day, whether it's going through Starbucks and being really nice to the person at the counter or something like that, or something in a big way when you have a relative that's sick and taking care of them. I just felt real compassion and humility for the entire family, and I believe Britt. I'm 100% in on him. I want him to stay sober the rest of his life and impact people in a positive way until the day he dies, and I think he's got a chance to do that.
I think he can, based on what I heard you play yesterday and going back yesterday and listening to more of that interview that he did. I agree. I'm hopeful for him. I'll pray for him and hope that he can get to that place. But you bring up an interesting point there, talking about what I was discussing earlier, but we should all always be changing, right? Like, I want someone to say in 10 years that has known me for 20 years, hey, you're different than you were 10 years ago. I mean, I think we're all trying to be better every day. We don't do it every day, but we all, I think, to be healthy, need to change oftentimes for the better. And I think that comes with living life, right? So whether it's Britt Reed, whether it's you, Kevin, whether it's me, I think we all want to find that place where we're growing as people every single day, week, month, and year. And that's what I hope for Britt Reed. I still think he can be judged based on what happened 4.5 years ago. But I can also look at him today and say he's a different guy, and I can have grace for him in a way that I otherwise maybe would not have grace for him 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, and so let me put another little piece of context on this for the Reed family. This is the first time Britt Reed, to my understanding, has ever really done anything in his life without his dad's help.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing his thing now. There's no nepotism here. So, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing that he worked for his dad and his dad got him jobs in other places and all those things. And it works for a lot of families and a lot of people. I made a conscious choice with my son when he graduated from school that he was not going to work at Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City. He went to Louisville, where we had a station, which was more of a proving ground or learning ground or whatever, and it was not a particularly great operation to send a 21-year-old kid out on the road to start his life. There was not a lot of discipline and order and whatever at that radio station, and in hindsight, maybe his career was stunted a little bit by that, but if he came to Kansas City and was on this station, 810, when I was on the air, first of all, I don't think he would have learned and become what he could become He's since moved on from sports radio, and he's in sales now, and he's expecting his first child, and they're just doing great. I don't regret for a second that I didn't take care of him in this industry. I never called anybody and said hire him. I didn't do any of that. And a lot of parents do that. That's not wrong. And a lot of parents don't. What I really respect about Britt is not just the fact that he's sober. This is the first thing, to my knowledge, that he's ever done on his own without his dad's help. And when I heard that podcast, I'm like, I guess maybe Andy said, go for it, tell your story, but I don't think Andy was thrilled that this is all out in the public. But it has certainly changed my point of view of what I think about their entire family. I think it was a good thing that he did.
And think about that, too, just the broader picture there of, what Spencer did. And, I moved out to Oklahoma, and, I'm trying to think of, it was April of 2011. So I was 22, just had myself my car and went out there and did my thing for a couple of years and, obviously built a career out of that in this industry. But I think for all of us, you learn about yourself doing things like that, right? No matter how it goes, you learn about yourself. And if you're always kind of having your hand held, how do you learn who you really are? How do you learn what you really want, Kevin? And it seems like that's part of what Britt Reed is going through right now. To your point, he's kind of learning who he is, and he's finding his own identity in a way that he really hasn't had during his adult life.
Yes, and I'll take it another step to the young man. Clark Hunt's son, we believe, is going to be the owner of the Chiefs someday. Now, that's about as high profile as it gets. We've seen his sisters and what they do. They're on social media all the time. They're doing all these things, and they're known as heiresses, and they've got boyfriends, and they live this lavish life, and they're on yachts in the Bora Bora and places like that. The son, nobody knows anything about him. Like, he's doing his thing, and it's my understanding he works at like an accounting firm somewhere. He was in business school at SMU, and he's gone out in the professional world. It is not football. At some point, it's obvious that he's going to come back to the Chiefs and work on the business side of things and learn that industry from his dad, because his dad's going to want to hand that football team down to his family. That's what the Hunts do. But I respect the fact that he has no role right now with the Chiefs. He's not really doing anything, and he's out doing his own thing. And I just think it's a great thing for young people to learn. The scary part for parents, Pete, and you'll learn this when your daughters are older, it's bad things can happen. When they go out on their own, you can't protect them anymore, and you can't help them. But, birds toss their young out of the nest just to see if they can fly, for crying out loud. I mean, how dangerous is that? So at some point, we just all kind of got to let go and see what our kids can do.
Well, you're right. There's this book that we read to our girls. My mom got it, I don't know, on some trip that they were on. It's a book about a bear. It's Grizzly $3.99. It's this bear who's had like 25 babies in Yosemite or something like that. And it's about how these bears, when the moms are done with the kids after a couple of years, they basically tell them to get lost and go out on their own. And they really don't see their kids ever again. That's just how bears do it. So to make your analogy there with animals, that's exactly where my mind went. The animal kingdom does this. They raise kids and they kick them out and they say, you're on your own. Go figure it out. I've taught you what you need to have to build a good life. Now you've got to go do it. And I feel like culturally in America, we got to a place where now you've got 30-year-olds living in mom's basement, getting their hands held, Kevin. At some point, that you want to talk about changing the culture, I think that's got to stop sooner than later here.
I agree. When my kids were 18, I said, you can go to college or you can get your own place. I'll pay for your college. And they all went to college. And I said, you can stay here in the summer, but that's it. And when you're done with college, you're not coming home. That's the end of it. And I told all three of them that. And they were good with it. And they've done it. It hasn't always been perfect. But there was no way I was going to have adult kids back in my house. That's like the craziest concept I've ever heard. You're not helping them.
Yeah.
They're not learning. They simply aren't learning if they're in the pantry all day and playing video games and hanging out. It just doesn't work. There's no way. I am firm on that, and I know people. I have very good friends who have kids in their 20s living with them. I am adamant about this. That is not the way.
Kevin Kietzman, Uncanceled, is coming up on KCMO. Looking forward to the Friday show, my man. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, buddy. You too.
Kevin Kietzman on KCMO. We're back Monday at 6.